Do you ever have times where something happens and maybe you put your foot in your mouth or you make a mistake and suddenly you just want to curl up in a ball and hide, like crawl in a little cave and never come out? Isolates, you overthink, you run the situation back in your head over and over, trying to make sense of it, and it just feels worse the more you think about it. If this sounds familiar, this is shame. This is what shame feels like. And sometimes we walk around saying we feel guilt when what we really feel is shame. So I want to talk about that today. And I want to explain the difference between guilt and shame and talk about why shame is so dangerous. What can we do when we are in a shame state to get ourselves out of it so that it does not sabotage our happiness and well-being? Okay, let's get started. First, I want to talk about the difference between guilt and shame. When you've done something that you're not proud of, something that you regret, we feel guilt. And guilt is a way of saying, I did something bad. It doesn't feel good, but we're saying I did something bad. Shame, on the other hand, is when we do something and as a result of that action or the way that somebody reacts or responds to that action, we say, I am bad. So guilt says I did something bad, shame says I am bad. We are now identifying with whatever the bad thing is, and it's become our identity. Another difference between guilt and shame is that guilt often promotes a feeling, a motivation to want to repair something. I put my foot in my mouth, I said the wrong thing, I need to go talk to that person, I need to make amends, I need to apologize, I need to clean that up. Guilt does create a pretty healthy motivation to correct the thing that we have done wrong. However, shame does the opposite. Shame makes us feel so terrible about ourselves that we want to avoid the situation altogether. Instead of going and making amends with the person, we want to hide from them. We never want to see them again. We just want to stay in our own little cave and not be around people because we feel terrible about ourselves. So guilt is adaptive and shame is maladaptive. Another difference is that when we feel guilt can also be a way that it connects us to our conscience and our values. It reminds us when we are out of alignment with what we believe in because we feel uncomfortable. We recognize that something we've done does not line up to our values or our morals, and so that gets us to do something different, to course correct. Shame, on the other hand, can often lead to us feeling depressed or even feeling anger because of just how lousy we feel. Sometimes we even take that anger and we project that anger onto other people because we can't stand to tolerate how it feels to hold on to it inside. So as you can see, shame is something that is very harmful. It also can get us into a dysregulated state where we are no longer able to think rationally. For people who had experiences early in life where they got stuck in a shame state, it can be very difficult to get out of that shame state. So I want to talk about some things that you can do if you notice yourself in a shame state. What can you do to get out of it? So here's the first thing we want to do. Step one, you need to recognize when you are in a shame state. This might seem redundant, but sometimes when we are feeling shame, we don't consciously recognize it as shame. We believe that we are just reacting to the reality of life. If you are telling yourself, I'm a loser, in that moment, that feels like reality, even though it isn't reality. It's a shame-based message that feels real. It's almost like being plugged into a virtual reality machine. And we have to be aware we are stuck. We're stuck in kind of a thought loop that is negative and distorted and emotional. We have to pull ourselves out of that. So if you notice in your self-talk that you have some very harsh messages, if you are feeling in your body feelings like depression, humiliation, self-loathing, if you notice these experiences, then that is the way you recognize that you are in a shame state, okay? You are in a shame state. Once you notice that you're there, we want to go to step two, which is to understand, how did you get here? How'd you get here? So I want to offer up something that I like to do called onion journaling. Onion journaling is about starting with a surface event. What is it that happened? And then peel back that layer and look at how you interpreted that event. What was the shame message that you took from that? Okay, so let's say there's somebody that you care about, maybe even someone who you're in a relationship with, and this person has had a bad day, and maybe they were really short with you, okay, or they said something kind of hostile. That's the surface layer, okay? Somebody mistreated you, but let's peel back that layer and let's look at what's underneath that. A feeling of being unwanted, a feeling of being unloved, a feeling of not being good enough. That is the shame state that you got stuck in. Oftentimes that shame state is rooted in events that occurred much earlier in life, but it is this place in your brain that you might just fall back into. And sometimes it exists like a thought loop that you just get stuck in, going around and around, but it feels very real. So I just want you to try to notice, what is it that happened that may have been the catalyst that put you into the shame state? What is the interpretation or narrative that you created that you're stuck in? Okay, once we learn how we got stuck, now it's time to get unstuck. So let's go to step 3. Step 3 is about showing love to the hurting self. If you're in shame, you are hurting. You're hurting in a deep, deep way. And even though it's hard to actually feel love for the hurting self, showing love for the hurting self is about taking an action or doing things for yourself that are nurturing. So giving yourself some physical nourishment, putting yourself in a nice environment, giving yourself some comforting sensory stimuli, maybe some good smells or music, just showing yourself care. These are things that in the moment you may feel zero motivation to do, but this is a really important part of breaking out of this thought loop, this trap that a shame state puts you in. So do things, actions, concrete actions to show love to the hurting self. The next thing I want you to do is to connect with a voice of reason. And this is when you're ready. Sometimes we want to just be alone for a little while, but at some point we want to connect with reason, because when you're in a shame state, you are highly emotional. If the voice of reason is your own voice, your own mind kind of coming to the table and sorting through things and grounding yourself in some affirmative messages, that's great. Often though, when we're in a shame state, we cannot summon our own voice of reason. So when that happens, it can be helpful to reach out. This could mean either tuning in to a voice of reason, maybe a podcast or a book or something that is not personal, but something that's available to you. Or on a more personal level, maybe there is somebody that you can reach out to, a trusted friend or family member, someone who you trust to kind of help you reason through your situation and help to ground you in reality. Okay? So connect to a voice of reason, whether it's yours or someone else's. The final step I want to offer for you is to take your situation, whatever provoked the shame state, and zoom out. Put a wide angle lens in place and try to zoom out from it and get some perspective. Whatever happened, in the grand scheme of things, it's very small. And I know that can be hard in the moment, because things in the moment when we're in shame, things are magnified in intensity. But we have to challenge ourselves to put it into perspective and to make it small alongside the bigger picture of time. And if you've ever noticed, have you ever been like maybe in an airplane and you look down and everything is so small? Sometimes it's easier to put things in perspective when you literally have a bird's eye view. But I want to invite you even to imagine looking at your life through a bird's eye view. Like, put yourself in a plane and look down on your situation and recognize how relatively small and minor and temporary it is compared to the grand scheme of life. And that this will pass and the feelings are going to fade. And even people's memories of things fade over time. So ground yourself in that perspective by zooming out with a wide angle lens. I hope some of these ideas are helpful, and I want you to know that being stuck in shame is something that a lot of people struggle with, but it's also something that really has no benefit and can be very harmful. If this is something that persists or that you have a difficult time managing on your own, please reach out for professional help, because this is something that really can do a lot of negative things to us emotionally, mentally, and physically, and we shouldn't have to suffer in that shame state. So please make sure you're taking care of yourself in this important way.